Okay, guys, welcome to Section 2 notes, or at least the first part of the notes today. Um, you're going to get your notes through this video recording. Isn't that awesome? I'm not there, but you still have to put up with me. Basically, the really cool part about this is, though, as we go through the slideshow, you can pause it at any time if you need to and get those notes if I'm going too fast or anything for you, okay? But there's some time limit. I want to keep it to shorter, so we are going to go as quickly as needed. We said yesterday, ultimate source of energy for almost all organisms on Earth is the sun. How do we get that energy? Comes from the solar energy there coming into the producers, right? They make it. How do they make it? I know you all know this. It is through photosynthesis. Yay! Okay. Life depends on the sun. Life on Earth depends on the sun. It enters the ecosystem when organisms use sunlight to make sugar. Another word for sugar is carbohydrates. I know you've heard that before. Carbs, right? Shouldn't have all those carbs. Carbohydrates are our energy molecule. Right? Another word for actually not another word. The specific type of sugar that is used to make energy is called glucose. You might have heard of fructose or sucrose. Those are also types of sugar, but they are actually converted into glucose because glucose is what's used by your cells to make the energy. Okay, so what is photosynthesis? You have your definition right there. The process by which organisms use sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water to create carbohydrates and oxygen. Basically, the definition is the equation, right? Carbon dioxide, water, plus solar energy, yield or create, there's your glucose, C6H12O6, and oxygen. Okay. Like we said, those producers, those things that create it, or autotrophs that use this energy, they include things like, plants, right? Phytoplankton like algae, or it could also include, and we didn't mention this today or yesterday, bacteria. Okay. All the other organisms eat the plants so they can get this energy as well. Plants use it themselves, other organisms use to eat it. Now, that first line says almost all organisms depend on the sun, but not all of them. Some ecosystems do depend, can exist without the sun being the basis for their energy. Instead of using something called photosynthesis, they use chemosynthesis. Okay? Again, synthesis to create, chemo meaning from chemicals. This is a process used by bacteria which use hydrogen sulfide to create their carbohydrates instead of the sunshine. It's sort of interesting. This happens near deep sea hydrothermal vents. Okay, this is a picture of a hydrothermal vent. What you see here are mussels that are living on the vent. These vents, actually, what we talked about a couple weeks ago, these vents exist on those plate boundaries, like the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Okay, the first ones were found off the coast of the Galapagos Islands. Attached to this NEO lesson, there are two videos that show hydrothermal vents to talk about the discovery. One of them was really good and gave a really nice explanation. That's the Greatest Discoveries one. The other one has the National Geographic video has actual video from their very first trip down to those deep sea vents. But the really cool thing is the bacteria that use that hydrogen sulfide to make their carbohydrates are then the basis for all this really immense, amazing food chain. So take a moment to look at those videos. Okay. Now, how do we get our energy from glucose? Cellular respiration. You might remember this. You guys remember talking about the mitochondria, the ATP powerhouse of the cell? That's where cellular respiration takes place. I know, we're going back to biology. Okay. Cellular respiration, all food contains energy which is broken down into using oxygen, right? Okay. It's when the carbohydrates, or glucose, are the starting molecule. Okay. Take a look at this. Glucose and oxygen are used to create carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Does that look familiar? Should. It's the exact opposite of photosynthesis. That's right. Cellular respiration is the exact opposite. One, we're making energy. The other, we're getting energy. Okay? Cellular respiration is a process used by all organisms to produce energy from carbohydrates. All of them. This does include plants as well. Just because they use photosynthesis to make the energy doesn't mean that they have the energy available. So there's a nice little demo right here. You see on your notes, this should be big and sort of bold and it's italicized. All organisms use cellular respiration. Okay, all eukaryotic cells have mitochondria. Okay, both plant and animal. In a plant, the chloroplast makes the glucose, which is then shipped to the mitochondria, which is where the energy is made. You can see this little picture down here of the plant cell. Those green are the chloroplast, the blue are the mitochondria. That's where the energy that it made is used then for everyday living. That's the next part of our notes. Here's a little picture of the animal cell. This is supposed to be an animal cell. Again, you have your mitochondria. Now, their glucose comes from digestion and it's going to move through the cell walls. But they're still using all of them. All organisms use cellular respiration. Okay, what do they use that energy for? Okay, well, what do you need energy for? Just to get up in the morning, right? Okay, use it for daily functions. Everything we do involves energy. Okay? That's how we stay warm, right? We lose a lot of energy just to stay warm. Okay, we also use energy to grow. Okay, to make the body tissue to make your legs longer. Okay, by plants to make new leaves. Okay, new body tissue as you grow. Also, as you fight disease, right? I mean, our bodies can only last so long. You need new blood cells. You need new white blood cells. All those sort of things. Okay, if we have extra energy in animals, okay, it's stored as fat. As plants, it's stored as sugar, but it can be stored. But the fact that we are constantly using energy will come up later. That was sections 1 and 2. Yesterday, we did section 3, roles of an ecosystem. What do we have? A producer. It's the same thing as an autotroph, right? Auto, self-making. Consumer, same thing as a heterotroph. Hetero, different making, getting their energy from different places. Okay. And we went further into consumers, different types. Herbivore, eat only producers. Carnivores, eat only other consumers. Omnivores, eat both producers and consumers. And then decomposers get energy from dead organisms. And again, a scavenger is not the same thing as a decomposer. Decomposers excrete things and absorb the nutrients. They don't ingest them. Okay? Well, yeah, you'll get the idea. Okay. Part 3, that was part 3. Part 4 talks about how we study this transfer of energy. Okay? Each time one organism eats another organism, a transfer of energy occurs. By knowing how much energy flows within an ecosystem and how much energy different species use, we can talk about how a blue whale eats this many pounds or tons of krill each year, that sort of thing. How much energy is used by different organisms. Scientists can analyze relationships and find out how organisms depend on one another to survive. Okay? So we can take a look at an ecosystem and we can create models on how those interconnections are made. There are 2 types of analytic models used by information. So they would take a picture, well, not literally take a picture, but you would have this overview of the ecosystem and you create a concept model. The first one, you're both familiar with both of them, the first one is the simplest. It's a food chain. It's the path in which energy is transferred from one organism to the next as each organism eats another. What I want you to notice is we're talking about the transfer of energy. Energy is transferred from one to another. So the arrows in our food chain always point to where the energy was to where the energy is going. Okay. Well, we start with your producer first. Down at the bottom, we have algae here. Here's your example of that Arctic food chain. Okay, algae there, which is being eaten by krill. And there you go. That's what krill looks like. It's little tiny, tiny shrimp-looking things, right? Sort of like sea monkeys. Okay. That energy is being transferred from the algae to the krill. Okay. The krill is being eaten by the Antarctic toothfish. So the energy is being transferred from there. So we have that in a picture. The Antarctic toothfish energy is being transferred to the leopard seal. That leopard seal will be eaten by the could be eaten by the killer whale. So energy is transferred there. Now each of these different steps are called trophic levels. This guy here, this is your producer. That's your first trophic level, producer. Okay. This guy here is a consumer, right? And he's our first consumer, so he's known as the primary consumer. Okay. Primary first, right? Primary grades are your elementary school grades, first grades. Okay. He is eaten by second consumer. So that second consumer is, you guessed it, the secondary consumer. You guys might want to write these down next to your picture so you can see that. These are going to come up again. Okay, so you have the secondary consumer. Now this guy, he may or may not be an omnivore. He may be just a carnivore or even an omnivore. The krill, he could be an omnivore or just a herbivore, right? The tertiary consumer, that's what we call, there we go. Tertiary consumer is what we call our third consumer. So this is another trophic level. This is actually the fourth trophic level. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we actually have more. We have enough consumers, enough predators here. So we have our killer whale. He is called a quaternary, quaternary consumer. Okay, so these are your trophic levels. So that's simple and straightforward. And we can take a look at that. We can say, okay, if something happens to the population of this Antarctic toothfish, what would happen in our Antarctic food chain? Well, if there's not that many of this guy around to eat them, the population of krill is going to go up, right? You don't have to worry about it. Which, if the population of krill goes up, that means the number of algae is actually going to go down because there's more krill to eat the algae. On the other hand, if the number of Antarctic toothfish goes down, there's not enough food for the leopard seal, right? Or they'll have to change it. So the leopard seal population can also go down. And again, if the leopard seal population goes down, so does the killer whale. Now, leopard seals are not the only thing that eat Antarctic toothfish, or they can eat other things besides Antarctic toothfish. How do we show those relationships? Well, those go into our food web. Okay, food web is a diagram that shows a feeding relationship between all organisms in an ecosystem. Okay. And you can see here, there's our original food chain, algae to krill, krill to toothfish, toothfish to leopard seal, and leopard seal to killer whale. But it shows everything that a killer whale eats, okay, like a cabreader seal. The cabreader seal also, or can eat krill. Okay, now the interesting thing is the cabreader seal can also be eaten by leopard seal. They're not very nice. They're actually really mean. Okay, leopard seals can also eat elephant seal. Jeez, this guy gets around, right? But the elephant seal can also be eaten by a killer whale. So it shows all those interrelationships. It's just arrows showing what's eating what, right? You're going to practice this today. There's a worksheet. The sub should be handing it to you. Work it out. There is a desert ecosystem, the Sonora Desert down in Arizona. So take a look. If you have questions, we'll talk about them when I get back. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, guys.